Welcome to emilykatemadethis. I am Emily Kate and I'm coming to you from Berlin in Germany. This is my knitting, sewing, crafty, vlogcast, podcast, YouTube channel. And this episode is, I would say, mostly knitting. We'll have a hint of sewing and a little bit of chat because I just went to Sweden and came back last night. A little bit blurry-eyed because I came back very late last night. But I bought some crafty, yarny, sewy things, so I thought I would share. So yeah, that's the general theme of today. It feels like it's been forever since I recorded, to the point where I have written out some notes because I actually have to split this podcast, YouTube video into different parts. Originally I wanted to do a different podcast, YouTube episode first, but I haven't got any of them to show you. That's a lie. I've got one of them to show you, but that's not going to be a very interesting video if I just talk about it and don't show you any photos and don't show you the item. So that video is going to be next time. I made a few things for the trip to Stockholm, which is where I went, by the way. I said Sweden. I went to Stockholm with my husband to celebrate his 40th birthday and we had a lovely time, and I will talk about it more later. But I wanted to make some clothes for the trip and I didn't get a single photo of most of them. So hence the reason that video will have to wait. But this video will focus more on my yarn Destash. If you have been here a while, you know that I have been trying to record some videos on destashing and knitting from my yarn stash. And theoretically, I was doing quite well. But somehow, yarn just comes in a lot faster than it goes out. And I think that probably has something to do with the fact that I'm knitting vintage knits at the moment, so they use thinner yarn and you don't need as much and it takes a lot longer. So one project would take me 4 to 6 weeks, whereas before it might have taken me 2 or 3 weeks and it was thicker yarn. So I'm going with that. But let us discuss. I did want to do originally a separate video for each month, but March, it was a bit of a blip, really. I wrote it down. I cut my fringe before the holiday and it looks like a child just came along with scissors and cut out a middle section of my hair. And all of my pictures from Stockholm, my hair's like, and it just separates into very bizarre things, so that's gonna bother me. Just like this chair that is spinning around. So my March in was 475 grams. I got some of the Knitter's Cottage yarn, which I talked about in my last normal episode, I think. I did a normal episode, then my vintage finished object episode, so it was the one before that. I talked about that yarn that my mum brought over from the UK, and I got some Arvetta sock yarn to make the eggs for a pair of fried egg socks by Stone Knits. I bought the pattern, but I still haven't managed to finish the gingerbread socks, and I'm refusing to cast on any more socks until the gingerbread man sock is finished. I have one sock to go, or half a sock, maybe 3/4 of a sock to go. Then the fried egg socks will be cast on. And the reason I bought that yarn was because I needed just a little bit more to go towards getting free postage, because I ran out of yarn for my vintage knit, and I think for example, it was €25 and you get free postage, and I had something like €22 worth of yarn, so I just added the extra. Otherwise I have to pay €7 postage, so it made sense. So I got that yarn. So out is seemingly very good because I gave my mother, who visited, 971 grams of yarn. I gave her some of the acrylic yarns and some sock yarns and some little things, but I didn't have any finished objects. So if you count the in and then count the out, that was 496 grams of yarn out in March. So then I did some calculations and where is it? My original starting, where are you? The original starting point of my yarn stash in January was 25 kilos, 928 grams. So then by March, I had 1 kilo, 125 grams out. So I had 24 kilos, 803 grams. So I was feeling pretty good about myself. So that was March in and March out. Now April, that's the month I finished 2 vintage knits. My rainbow jumper that you know all about if you've been here before. It's my last episode, I talked about it, and I've been talking about it I think for the last 2 or 3 episodes. That was 189 grams, and that was the Jamieson Spindrift yarn. And I ran out of it and had to order some more. And then with the leftovers, I made something else, which I will show you now. And that was 54 grams. So that was 243 grams out. However, then I went to Sweden and I said to myself, I won't buy any yarn unless it's Scotland or this brand Campus. And I went around and I went to a nice yarn store and spoke to the woman there, and she said it's pretty difficult to actually find Swedish yarn or Swedish yarn companies in physical stores. You're more likely to get it from the internet or from the spinning mills themselves. So I was a bit disappointed. But then I went to a store called, I did write this down but I won't pronounce it correctly. It's like Litet Nistan. Litet Nistan? Nistan? In English it's Little Skein translated to, which is very sweet. And I got my Campus 2-ply yarn, so I'm excited and I will show that to you. But I got 3 of them, so that was 300 grams in. So this yarn destashing is not going very well. That means I now have 24 kilos, 860 grams left. So technically I have gone down like 900 grams or something. Oops. But I was on holiday. You can't like not get yarn on holiday. Yeah, I'm just talking myself out of this. But there are plans. I have plans for it. So let's put this down. I purchased this beautiful yarn because I saw it. Honestly, I don't even remember where I came across this brand. Possibly from a Swedish knitting channel, YouTube channel, or maybe it was a pattern, but I came across it and the colours are so nice. And I got really into sport weight yarn last year, end of last year, but I couldn't get this yarn delivered to Germany, and I was going on all these different websites and nowhere would post it here, so that's why it was on the list. If I see it, I'm allowed to get it, so I did, and it's beautiful. This colour, this colour is everything. I'm not sure how well you can see it. I'm sitting right into the window, but it's really dark and grey, so I'm not sure if it's an accurate representation. It's kind of more muted. But this is going to be the Forest Berry jacket, or Forest Berry cardigan by Fable Knitwear. She's actually one of the people that I just watched her videos straight through. I was going to say it's not like they're very interesting. That's not quite what I mean. It was nice just to have someone talking about vintage knits and knitting in general, but in the background, the videos were quite old, I think they were recorded in 2018. So some of the information wasn't really relevant that she was saying, and some of it was like she hadn't made most of her patterns at that stage. So it was just nice to watch the progression of her knitting, pattern writing journey and hand-dyed yarn journey. So I just had her on in the background and saw that she often had sales in April because her birthday is in April. So I held off and waited, and she did indeed have a little sale back at some point in April. So I bought the Forest Berry jacket pattern so I could knit this, because she uses the Hillersvåg Ask, which is a sport weight. So I figured this is a sport weight, that should work too. And I always have to adjust my needles anyway to make things tighter, so it doesn't really matter. So there's a sneaky peek of one of my acquisitions. There are 3. So that is what I bought in Lietzetnistan. Then my finished object of the month. I won't show you the jumper because I did the whole episode on it and I talked about it enough. So you can, if you're interested, that one I'll link somewhere here. But after that, I wanted something I could use up. I wanted to knit something I could use up the leftover little skeins balls of the Jamieson. I didn't manage to use it all up, but I'm pretty close. I decided to make a beret. Me making berets, who would have thought? I have a slight obsession with berets, but I decided I don't need to make any more. Then I joined Squidney Knits Knitting. I should have written this down. I'll put it here. Squidney's School of Vintage Knitting, and it's great. It's really fun. And I saw this hat called the Marvellous Beret. I did adjust the pattern slightly in that I didn't follow her colour choices. I used the same pattern's colour sequence as I did for my jumper, but it is a slightly different slip stitch pattern. Isn't it lovely? I did use slightly smaller needles and I chose the smallest size. You can only get this pattern if you are a Patreon. So yeah, I did the smaller size and smaller needles. It has come out quite large, like it looks pretty large. The saddest thing is I never even got to wear this on my trip because the weather was so glorious. That part wasn't sad, but the hat never got to be worn. So let's see. I think it's quite big. It's bigger than my other ones. Yeah, I need to figure out how to wear it first. It's probably better with my hair down. I don't know. Maybe further back on my head. Don't know. Yeah, it looks a bit strange with this hairstyle, but it looks cool. The slip stitch pattern's slightly different, but similar enough that I thought it would work if I put the same colours in the same order as my jumper. So I'm very pleased with it. I still have a few scrappy bits. I'm thinking perhaps I could do the same stitch pattern in a pair of socks, or maybe some mittens, or I don't know. We'll see. But at least I was able to use some more of the yarn because I only needed about 3 grams of some of them to finish the jumper. And it's amazing how much 3 grams will give you in a whole jumper. It's baffling. What's also bizarre to me is that all of the colours in the jumper, except the white obviously, in the hat and the jumper, they're all equal. But I had significantly less brown than I did on the other colours, and a lot more pink left over in both the jumper and the hat, even though they're the same, they use the same amount of yarn. Weird, huh? Anywho, let's take that off. So that is all of my finished objects, that singular hat, and the jumper, of course, which you have seen. So that is April and March, rounded up. Then, let's talk Sweden. Sweden, I came across they have thrift stores, or secondhand stores, op shops, whatever you want to call them. I can't find any here. There is one Humana in Berlin that I found, but it's really expensive, and I went in there twice. I was going to say every time. Both times I've been in there, the clothes were physically dirty. Like stains, sweat patches, mud. Like, I don't need to pay for that. So I'd rather go to secondhand stores that have clothing that's decent quality and still in one piece. So Stockholm had lots of secondhand stores and vintage shops, so we went around most of them, I think, and it was great fun. And I came across some patterns, some sewing patterns. Are they in Swedish? Yes, they are. Can I read it? No, but it's sewing. I can figure it out, right? I don't know, probably being too optimistic, but there is Google Translate, so I've got this one. This one. And this one. I haven't checked if all the pattern pieces are in there or not, but they're only the equivalent of about €2. So hopefully I've got enough. Hopefully all the pieces are there. We shall see. But I thought that looks pretty vintage, 1940s style-ish. That one's 1950s, I would say. And I don't know what this is, but it looked delightful. So found those. Then I also came across this, which I'm not 100% sure what it is, but I saw it like everywhere in thrift stores. And I spoke to Alex from, I've never said it out loud, Bookcupied? I'll link her here. She's Swedish, and she said that they were crocheted and often used on window ledges. And I thought it was so pretty. It's pretty long, and it was €3. It's 1 meter and 1.3 meters. I'm not sure what I'll do with it because I don't have a windowsill. We have floor to ceiling window just here. But it's pretty. I thought I could either put it on one of my shelves, or maybe I would sew it into a dress or a skirt or do something with it, unless you have any ideas. But it was too pretty to leave behind, so I bought it. I also found myself a vintage leather belt, which I'm delighted by, and it's got these really cute little, can you see it? If I get my head out. Not sure if you can see the pattern, but since we don't have these secondhand stores, I can never find a leather belt that has been used and pre-worn and like softened and smushed down and slightly thick and the right shade of brown. I can only find belts that are brand new, that are in TK Maxx, and then they're like 50 quid, and I don't need a belt for 50 quid. So delighted to have found this one in one of the thrift stores. Also got myself a vintage plate. I'm such a sucker for vintage plates and cups and teacups and saucers, and just, I love them. I have a lot, I don't need that many, but I love them so much, and I love finding them. And I love blue and white ones, and I love ones with houses on. This one I bought because I got some fika, some cinnamon buns, and oh, they were so good. If you've been on my Instagram, you'll have seen I ate a lot. And I had some leftovers and I didn't want to eat them just out of the paper bag, so it gave me an excuse to go to the second-hand store and get myself a vintage plate for €1.90 and eat it off my plate. I'll put a picture. That was delightful. What else did I... Oh, and I got the fanciest, most expensive yarn I've ever had. This is hand-dyed camel and silk yarn, apparently, on the label. I'll try and show you. It's so cute. Focus. Doesn't want to focus. I will try and insert a picture, but it's so cute. I got this in the same shop as the yarn. Did I leave the... It's a mini skein necklace. Yarn Tanimi by Travel Knitter. Made by Max Alexander. It's British. Well, there we go. I couldn't resist it. So cute. Anything else? And speaking of Swedish and the language not understanding, I also decided to treat myself at the airport. Our flight was supposed to be delayed, so I thought I will get something to entertain me. So I got these. They came in a pack. And they are Swedish knitting patterns, a knitting magazine. No, I can't read it, but hopefully I can read the charts and I can Google translate the written instructions. But there's not like amazing patterns in there, but I thought it was something fun. And there are a few patterns I would like to give a whirl. I'll show you one. I want to adjust it so that it's tighter because it's a little bit too loose for my liking. And there's also a man's zip-up cardigan jacket thing. Excuse me. And gnomes. This is totally worth it. So, successful holiday. I had a wonderful time. I adore Sweden. I've been slightly, mildly, completely obsessed with Sweden for a while now. And most of the people that I watch on YouTube are from Sweden. I do watch other people, but a vast majority are Swedish. And I just love watching YouTubes about Sweden, and I finally got to go. So thank you, husband, for turning 40. I even got myself some tea just because it had the red house. I love Swedish houses, the red wooden houses. So don't have a clue if this tea is very nice. Hopefully it is, but it's got a red house on it. Marketing, people. Marketing works. Hello, Editing Emily here. I completely forgot to tell you about the bizarre experience I had in Berlin airport when I was going through security. They I went through the machine that scans you, and the guy reacted like, ooh, okay, you've got to come out and go to my colleague and she'll pat you down. And as I walked off to her, he was still talking to me, and he was asking about my jumpers. I was wearing 2 of my knitted jumpers, and he asked me if I knitted them. And I said yes. And then as he was asking me, did you knit both of your jumpers? The colleague who was patting me down was asking, did you do your hair yourself? And can you spin around? And then he was asking me about other knitting. And then she was patting me down and went to my socks. And oh, did you knit your socks? I must see these. It was so bizarre. I was spinning in circles, talking to two people about my knitting whilst having my bags checked. And when they checked my bag, and it was my beret that I was just talking about that seemed to be causing their interest. I don't know. They took out the hat and they were looking at the hat. It was bizarre. It was a very knit heavy experience. I was left very confused afterwards. Like, what does wool do to these machines that makes them so stressed out? How odd. How very odd. You may have noticed that I haven't really been recording very much recently, and I thought I would just touch on that a little bit because it's been a little bit odd actually for me. I have just monogamously knitted on items. I don't do that. But for some reason, the last month and a half, I just couldn't focus on more than one project. Like the idea of knitting more than one thing was stressing me out. So I just went with that and I focused on my vintage knits and worked through those. And it also led into not being able to concentrate's not quite the right word. I haven't been able to sit down and watch multiple podcasts and multiple podcasters' episodes, and like I usually do. I watch several different people's YouTubes and I just felt like too much. Too many people, too many conversations, too many things, too many projects. Like, it was getting stressful, like too much. So I also couldn't bring myself to record because it felt too much. Theme of today. So hopefully that phase has passed and I can go back to watching all my lovely YouTubing friends and knitting all the things, doing all the things. But at that time I just couldn't record and couldn't concentrate basically on anything except one singular task and one singular YouTuber non-stop. Like a stalker. No, not really. Okay, I will stop talking now because I feel, often when I record these I feel like it's been all over the place and a mess, but then when I watch it back it's not so bad. But equally I'm still feeling a bit like, I have so much I want to say and yet I can't put the words in my mouth and then make them come out. So I think it's safer for everybody if I just stop talking. And I will try and record an update on what I made for Sweden. And spoiler alert, this was one of them. And then I will talk to you about what I am knitting on and up to, hopefully much sooner than last time, or this time. Okay, thank you for watching. Bye.